I've seen no good people turn their heads each day, so satisfied I'm on my way.
Hi guys, this is Christian from the Zeitgeist Movement Germany, and I'm here with Roxanne Meadows. They're here for their World Lecture Tour in Germany, and we now have the chance to ask them a couple of questions about the Venus Project, transition, and all that kind of stuff. Hi Roxanne.
Hi Christian.
Okay, well, first of all I'd like to talk about some of these ever-occurring arguments against the Venus Project that come from certain critics.
Yeah.
Like we always have that zinger communism, we have words like utopia and machine takeover. Where do you think do these opinions come from the people? Because we always hear them spewed out the same way. We don't really hear any logical arguments, but we just hear those slogans basically. What is it in the people that makes them say these things?
Well, in the educational system today, I don't think people are taught how to be critical thinkers. I don't even think they know what communism is when they talk about it. They surely don't know what the Venus Project is, otherwise they wouldn't equate the two. So it's very hard. This system fortifies people with quick answers to support whatever system exists. All countries train their people with their values and their behavior to support existing systems. Otherwise, you couldn't get people to go fight for their wars or put up with what's happening in society. They know very little about it, so they really have to look into the Venus Project to understand the difference.
Certainly, I couldn't agree more, and I think that nowadays you really have the kind of thing that people don't like to be noticed by others. If they say something that doesn't really apply to what other people would want them to think and feel and act, like if they don't disagree with everything that the masses disagree with, then they would also fall out of the picture, that they kind of keep themselves under control. You know, we don't need these the police to tell us what to think. We do quite a good job ourselves, don't we? Roxanne, haven't you seen Terminator? Don't you know what's going to happen if we go into a resource-based economy? What is it that makes people think that way?
They haven't seen anything positive in terms of machines in the future. They're really sci-fi magazines and sci-fi movies give them those values in that direction, that things are, you know, everything is negative in the future. They're going to strangle people, they're going to watch people, they're going to dictate what they do. So they just haven't heard how machines can help people in the future. When you get money out of the scenario, like today, they really have every right to be afraid of machines, because when a machine comes in, they downsize people and they don't have the purchasing power. They lose their jobs, they can lose their house, they can lose their family because of it. They can't take care of them. So it is very frightening. But in the resource-based economy, when machines come in, you lose your job, but you have more access to goods and services. When the system is for the benefit of people and not for the benefit of just a few that gain from being able to produce more through machines and eliminating paying people wages, then it's a very different scenario. Today, the scapegoat are the machines. But if you tell people, if people say to you, well, we have too many machines, we have to reduce machines, that's the problem. But if you say to them, okay, I'm going to come tomorrow and take away your telephone, your washing machine, your dishwasher, your computer, they say, no, 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 no. So they don't really understand the benefits of technology and what they can do for them. But as I mentioned, it's really the abuse and misuse of machines in today's society. It's not the machines that are the problems.
So now I'd like to talk a little bit about the transition. I've been asking within my chapter what they would like to know from you guys. If they had the opportunity to talk to you, what would they ask you about? And many of them were like, sure, I agree with the tenets of the Venus Project, but seriously, like, our society is so screwed up and so messed up. How can we go about it the best scientific way, basically, to transition from this system that's so screwed up to something like the resource-based economy?
That question is asked at every stop during the World Lecture Tour. But really, Jacques and I have no money. We have no power. They ask like we have control of things to manipulate the transition. We don't. It really, a lot of it depends on how many people the Zeitgeist members influence. That's our safety. If enough people know about this direction and understand it and can carry it out, even if something happens to me or Jacques or PJ, if people don't understand this direction, it won't manifest. And the more that it's not manifested, the more problems we'll have. You know, if it turns out into somebody else's interpretation of what they think it is, rather than using scientific scales of performance to deal with our social problems. You know, look at what the problems are, look at the causes of the problems, and devise something that eliminates and surpasses those problems. So the transition can come in so many different ways, but I think for the most part, it will have to hit people's pocketbooks. As long as they're working, as long as they have jobs, as long as they can feed their families, they're a bit complacent if they don't have enough knowledge as to what is wrong in society and what they're missing. That's why we wanted to do a major motion picture. Peter's next film, I'm sure, will have a tremendous impact. Jacques and I would like to do a film that reaches the general public in kind of an entertaining documentary way that'll carry the majority of the people who know nothing about this. So as I said, they'll understand what they can work towards, they'll understand what's missing, and advocate it when the time comes or before that. So we want to show in the film what life in the resource-based economy would be like, and then help answer the questions, the everyday questions that everybody has, and then show how we get from here to there in the film. But, you know, Jacques and I have been working for 35 years in obscurity, and nobody paid any attention to us. And it just took meeting one person, Peter Joseph, who did that fantastic film, and now look at it, in less than 2 years we have chapters all over the world, and people who are working really hard to understand this direction. And they're reading books, and mainly they're talking to other people, and it's really important to them personally to talk about this and work towards it. And that's what it'll take. So it really, we could just meet one other person that could say, okay, let's go with the city or let's go with the movie. And it looks like it's getting closer and closer. I don't want to talk about it because it hasn't happened yet, but we're encouraged with some potentials that we've come across during this tour.
I also find it kind of unfair to think about it that you guys spent decades researching and actually working on this type of stuff, and there's some people that look at this documentary the same way that they would look at a motion picture, you know, just with a beer and the chips in their hands, and they just spew out like the questions that come to mind, and they don't even think about the fact that all of this has been thought about, but we need is really participation of people to kind of try and improve the way things are going right now. One thing that was interesting also was the teams that we were talking about in the transition, that there will be different teams for different areas of the functions of the Venus Project resource-based economy, basically. How could you talk a little bit about the teams?
Sure. Well, there'd be different teams of technical personnel, of people who understand what's needed in, say, the first thing, we need to feed people. We need to create different alternative sources of clean energy. We need people who are competent in that field. But the very first thing that has to be done, aside from making sure people are housed and clothed and fed, and they have energy to live with, you know, clean sources of energy, we need a survey of the Earth's carrying capacity. We don't want to build just arbitrarily. It's not Jacques making decisions and telling people what to do. It's based on scientific forms of scientific methods applied to the social system. So first there has to be a survey to know what we have, to know where the arable land is, to know where the people are, to know where the technical personnel are, to know where the industries are, to know where, as I said, the arable land, and where the diseases are. That will dictate how many hospitals we need in certain areas, and where we can grow, where we can build the cities, and where we can grow different products. We have to test the soil, know what it could be used to grow best. You know, that the soil would determine that, the test of the soil. So it's not just, as I mentioned, just somebody's whim or opinions. We don't want opinions. We want to check things out.
For sure. So the process you just described would be that arriving at decisions, the thing that Peter Joseph always talks about, and that would be another question, is like who makes the decisions? And as you talked about, it would be no one really. They would analyze and then base off. So we're still talking about the general critic answers that we get from talking to people about the resource-based economy, and one aspect that really comes up a lot, Roxanne, is this whole communism thing. It's like, well, is this Karl Marx speaking to me right now? You know, like, don't you see that everyone being able to have everything and no money being there is complete communism?
Yeah, that comes up a lot. It's a real scapegoat, communism, but they really don't know what they're talking about. They haven't looked into the Venus Project to know the difference. Communism uses money. Communism has elitism. Communism has political parties or form people who make decisions. They don't necessarily have the notion of arriving at decisions and using scientific scales of performance to arrive at decisions. So communism is for the labor class. We are for the labor class to eliminate them as soon as possible. We have updated things to our technology that we have today, to use technology to eliminate work as quickly as possible. They didn't look into that. Most of all, communism had wishes and aspirations, but they didn't have a methodology of how to arrive at it. And they didn't use technology wisely. So there's a lot of differences between Marxism or communism and the Venus Project.
Yeah, what I'd also like to add to that is that communism doesn't really take into consideration the carrying capacity of the Earth, because the resource-based economy really puts a lot of value onto how much can the Earth actually support, and communism has never really applied the scientific side into their theory.
And they also didn't understand the notion of behaviorism and looking at what causes behavior within the system and trying to design a society to surpass the need for military, for prisons, for armies and navies. They didn't understand that concept either. They had the early stages with Pavlov, but they didn't carry it into how to design a society where people can behave constructively and cooperatively. There were a lot of problems in communism that they didn't know how to deal with. And they didn't have a blueprint. They didn't have city designs. They didn't have a technical blueprint as to where to go.
Okay, Roxanne, I have a question about the, let's say, usage of the nature of children who are born and they want to learn things. And what do you think breaks them to get so static in their point of view?
Well, children from an early age are not introduced to science or technology or how we relate to one another or nature. Children are given arbitrary, artificial notions. They're given fairy tales. They're given, especially women, little girls, they're given notions of romanticism and somebody coming to take care of them, you know, the prince and the princess, and they're given so many artificial things that they pump in their heads the Mickey Mouse Club, and after they fill their heads with all these lies, then they expect them to think critically. They have no way of thinking critically. So it's really detrimental. Kids want to know everything. They want to know how trees grow and how things work, and just like little boys want to know about mechanics and trucks and things, little girls want to know that too. Instead they're given dolls that are inanimate objects, you know, when little boys get trains. So they have a different start from the very beginning. Their patterns are different from the very beginning, what they're able to explore, which is detrimental to women more so. So men become more inventive, not because they're men and women can't do that. It's just that their range is less when they're very young, what they can explore and what they can do. So it's very hard to take kids after they've already been indoctrinated. They're not, even as they get older, they're not taught how to think critically. Everything is segmented. Science is one discipline and the arts is another discipline, and they're not taught how they interact with one another and how they're similar. So you have all these different disciplines that can't even talk to one another, and it gets very difficult to be able to have an understanding of the world and how it works and where we can go when you make everybody regimented in their own little discipline. That's how you can abuse people, by enabling them to make bombs, because they only know, they get a kick out of rocketry or making something more destructive. instead of asking, why are we making the bombs? What is it for? Why can't we solve our differences without violence? That's above and beyond their scope, because they leave that to the politicians, thinking that they know how to do that, and they don't at all. So from the very beginning, you're given nonsense, and it carries through to the rest of education. You're taught to be a cog in the wheel without being able to think. So all you do is get a job. And even after you retire, it's very difficult for people. Most of them just die because they have no other interests. They can't afford to dream. You know that saying, they dare not dream, because they can't do the things they want to do because they don't have the money to do that. So the monetary system flattens things out tremendously.
Yeah, for sure. So one of the major problems seems to be that everybody takes his experiences and says that this is right, and he combines it to the things that he was told. But many things of these stories and so on were lies, just like Santa Claus. Yeah.
Right.
And so you have you believe in some kind of magic, but this is some kind of a manipulation. So
It primes children, especially little girls, to go into mysticism and metaphysics instead of understanding the nature of the world, how things work, you know, how we behave the way they do, how we behave the way we do. And they don't want people to be that critical or that wise. You know, in the old days, they didn't want their slaves to learn how to read because they couldn't manipulate them. Same thing today. If they're taught how to think critically and question what's happening, then they can't control them. They can't get people to go fight their wars. And all of the thinking and their behavior is manipulated. They don't know it. They think that they have free will and they have individuality, but from an early age, they were pumped with things that don't enable them to think. They're pumped with things that, you know, the whole system is created, and the values and behavior of the system is generated by just a few, those people in position of differential advantage that have the money to bribe and persuade politicians to make laws in their own self-interest. These people also, the military, the church in many instances, the banks and the corporations, they determine your values and behavior because they influence the books you read, the TV that you see, the newspapers, the magazines. They influence the schooling to get jobs to serve their self-interests. They influence the entertainment. You keep people entertained. You send them to work 5 days a week, and then on the weekend, on Saturday, they have to take care of home life and laundry, and then on Sunday they go to the football field, so that their head is left empty. They can't read books that help them to look at the world and understand why things are the way they are. They have to read books that give them a higher standard of living so they can get up in the world, in money, in the monetary system. If you read things like Tyranny of Words or the nature of the monetary system, this doesn't help you make a living. This doesn't help you in your job. So it's a luxury to understand those things. So, it's very difficult. Then they say, think for yourself. But they've already pumped things in, your values and your behavior, to serve their self-interests. And it's already an established system, and they want to keep things as they are.
How do we get people to understand that actually they're lied at? How do we make them feel that their perspective is based on many assumptions that are not natural? They're caused by manipulation in all perspectives and types.
Yeah, that's the hard part, huh? Essentially what you're telling them is everything that they've learned to believe in sacred is really, they've been lied to and they're suckers. That's a hard thing to say, So I think the best way is in films, because it's not somebody standing up and talking to them or confronting them directly. But just what people are doing also within the movement, learning how to talk with people. You have to start at their level so they're not offended, saying that you thought just like they did so they can identify with you. And sometimes you can go 3 steps forward, and if you see that they're getting angry, you might have to go 2 steps back and agree and then try something else. It's kind of trial and error to see what works with what person. And sometimes if you say certain things, they might come back later and understand after experiencing some other things. But we think films are the best way. Film is the best way to get to people. It can reach more people in the shortest amount of time. People can write about it, do music about it, do art, about these new ideas, the Venus Project, the Zeitgeist movement, but mostly talking to people one-on-one and practicing that. I think it's a great thing that the Zeitgeist members, after we leave certain places, are beginning to make PowerPoints and make lectures and go out to talk to people. But I think it would be wonderful if they had a place to communicate and put their lecture online so other people can take it and try it, and then talk to one another about the questions they received and how they answered them, and how much progress they made, and so they try other things. It might work different in different countries as well. We've seen that. So the more you can talk amongst yourselves, the better also. And another good thing is that people are beginning to take the reading list within the members themselves and read the same books and then go and talk about them, see what they got out of it, each member. And it's a great way to learn different values and start incorporating some of the things that they learned or what they read, and experiment with other people in that way as well. And then come back and tell other people what happened, how they answered certain things, what luck they had, and how they might have answered differently, and keep trying different things. You really have to hit your head against the wall with all this and do all the wrong things to arrive at what works. So you just go out and try it and don't expect success in the beginning, but you will improve.
There is a status in any society at the moment of many assumptions, and there are many things that happen. Let's say the crisis of the banks, and people start to wonder and say, okay, what's happening there? I don't understand it. And so
you want to know what will turn people around within society?
Yeah.
Okay. Most people, as I mentioned before, I don't know if you asked me the question or maybe Christiane asked me the question, as long as, for the majority of people who aren't wise enough intellectually or emotionally, they don't have the luxury to sit back and ask what's going on in society, they really have to make a living. And for most people, as long as they're making a living and paying their bills, paying their mortgage, paying their kids' schools, they won't look for anything else. It will take them losing their jobs, losing confidence in their elected leaders, losing their houses, and sometimes losing their wives and their family before they look around and say, something's wrong. We have to look for another alternative. And this is the time to be speaking with people, because as things fall apart even more, if they get so militant that you can't go out and speak to people, or you'll be more of a target, it will be harder. So this is the time to get the information out there so people will have a direction to move toward when they're able to listen to it. Many people can't listen to it right now.
Yeah, I was, before I started the Zeitgeist movement in Munich, I was walking all day long in the city around and discussing with many people. And most of them agreed with my words totally. And the only thing that everyone was believing was that he is the only one. Yeah? But I talked to maybe 50 or 60 people in this month, or maybe more, and everyone said that he is the only one who is thinking this way. Yeah? So
Sure.
maybe the potential in the society, I think, is here, and maybe we only need to encourage people not to adjust to the society we have, because most people don't want it. They just think that they have to do it, and maybe if we demonstrate a kind of practical way how to get out there, they will just start to adjust to something that seems to be natural to themselves.
Well, people don't know what to move towards. That's why we feel film is so important, to demonstrate. And, you know, sometimes they have a bias if somebody comes up and talks to them. So film is a good way. They can sit down and look at it. We want them to walk out in the audience and say, why can't we live like this now? If you show people something, they don't misinterpret it as it goes in their head, and it comes out with their past associations that might not have anything to do with what you're really saying. So showing people with films is, I think, one of the most appropriate ways.
Yeah, and then maybe we need great actions to really encourage people. Maybe demonstrating the film guerrilla with some kind of beaming the Zeitgeist addendum somewhere, so that people wonder, hey, what's going here on?
Right. Well, everything that the members are doing are really fantastic. They have all sorts of methods to try and get this direction out there, and I think if they talk to one another as to what they're doing and share more of their experiences, which I think they're doing on TeamSpeak now, is a great thing.